Hey everybody, welcome to Correctional Commentary. I'm Robbie.
And I'm Caleb, as always.
And welcome to Season 2. So on this one, we have a very special guest, and I will let you introduce him.
Our very special guest he's a wonderful man. He is currently a Tennessee state representative out of District 32, which is the Kingston and Rockwood and Roane County district. He is also, right now, running to be the next Tennessee governor for the Republican Party. He is a wonderful, God-fearing man, as our viewers may or may not know, and listeners. We are very much Christians, so the Christian faith is very important to us, and Monty is very proud of that. We're so blessed to have him on. I've actually got to meet with him prior to this episode and asked him if he would ultimately come on the show. Obviously, he agreed, and we are so excited and so blessed to have him on here. It's going to be a great episode. We hope you stick with us throughout this entire episode.
Yeah, I mean, we're not going to go too in-depth on the intro. We're about to bring his video in, and we're going to start straight from that. And as always, in Season 2, we're going to carry over from Season 1. Everything is unedited, unscripted. None of the questions that we ask him, he knows was coming. He's very adamant on that, is he doesn't want to know the questions. He wants everything to be unscripted.
And I do want to add one more thing about Monty, especially for the channel and our listeners. One thing that really makes him special, and I'm not going to, again, the rest of the episode will deep dive into it, but kind of give a little bit of a background about him. He is a former correctional officer. So that's one of the reasons why we really wanted to have him on the show. Because he's a former correctional officer, and now he's running for governor. Then in the episode you guys will get ready to see and listen to, you will see how he makes that jump and get to know more about him. We hope you stay tuned.
So, without further ado, we'll go on and insert the video right there.
This is our podcast, Correctional Commentary. We're so excited and grateful for you to be on with us today.
Yes, sir. I'm honored.
No, sir, the honor's all ours. Yeah. Most definitely.
I'm Robbie. I haven't had the pleasure to meet you yet.
Having a hard time hearing you, Robbie.
He's having a hard time hearing me.
Can you hear me, Monty?
I've got you loud and clear, Caleb.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotta love technology sometimes.
Yes. It's good to meet you, Robbie.
Are you able to hear me?
Got you now.
Okay. I guess real quick before we really get into this, do you have any off-topic things as far as personal stuff, not just anything you just don't want to discuss?
Whatever you want to talk about, I'm good.
Okay. Well, I guess the first thing we'll ask is probably the question you've probably been asked 1,000 times, but just for our listeners that don't know anything about you or anything like that, tell us a little bit about yourself, and especially how did you go from being a correctional officer to a gubernatorial candidate?
Well, thank you. I never would have wanted. I don't want to run for governor now. I didn't want to be in politics, to be honest with you. I think God has blessed me through life. I worked for the Department of Corrections 85 through the first part of 88. Correctional officer at Morgan County Regional, and was probably at that point in time going to spend a life in law enforcement type work and stay in the Tennessee National Guard. And I was able to get to work at Y12 as what they referred to at that time as a security police officer, and like a site-wide law enforcement type thing. And I did that. It bored me. Working in a penitentiary is not boring, as you two fellows know.
Yes, sir.
Sometimes it's more exciting than it should be. And
I agree.
So we found ourselves kind of bored. I was working a rotating shift in the SPO job, and decided that I was going to go back to school. And I did that. And then God just put people along the way that invested in me and gave me opportunities to do things that I'm certain I didn't really necessarily earn. They were just good people that God put in my path. And I found myself, after having done several things, I managed, was a director of enriched uranium operations at Y-12, and director of operations at nuclear fuels for a little while. Along the way, had gotten out of the Tennessee Guard in 93, re-enlisted in 2003 to deploy with my fellow guardsmen to Iraq in 04 and 05. Enjoyed being a soldier for the 13 total years I did that. I really enjoyed that. And I worked as a office director, acting office director. While Trump 45 was in, I stood up the Office of Stockpile Production Integration. I spent 4 years with the Department of Energy as a federal employee of the National Nuclear Security Administration. We're responsible for program management of the uranium, plutonium, and tritium recycle and recovery programs across the country. Retired, we're going to be a full-time grandpa, ride motorcycles more, hunt more, shoot more. And
you sound like our kind of guy.
I got really frustrated with how Nashville was handling things, COVID related, declaring people as non-essential, a commissioner of health trying to push people to take the jab or wear a mask when you're on the telephone, all kinds of stupid things. And we bought into those silly policies, fellas, in Tennessee. Our governor did, our state government did. And it infuriated me. So I ran for office. I had folks that I'd worked with for a long time or had worked for me or something. And they were being told that if they didn't comply with what the government was telling them to do regarding their, taking the vaccine jab thing and all that they were going to lose their jobs. And it infuriated me. I ran for office. We won. I term limited myself to 2 terms as a state representative. I'm currently House District 32 rep for Rome County and north half of Loudoun County. And was happy to get away from that. Don't really like being around politics, to be honest with you. There's some good people. There are some people that are just flat out politicians that you don't like being around, just to be honest.
Yeah.
But
I can only imagine.
I was glad to get away from that. And God put a burden on my heart for the state. I think we're headed the wrong direction in many areas, not just in corrections, but many, if not all, of the departments in Tennessee have been have leadership failures. Some with the governor, some with the commissioners, many with the commissioners, not all. I think we're fortunate to have a couple pretty good commissioners in the state, but we've taken on a globalist approach to government in Tennessee rather than a liberty and a volunteer approach and Tennessee values. And I think we need to recalibrate that. So I'm answering the call, I think. And it's a huge hill to climb. It's a steep hill to climb. We're running against a political establishment, not just the people. I'm not picking on the other people that are running. We're running against a political establishment that thinks that they can spend millions upon millions of dollars, send out meaningless mailers, have no idea what you two men face each day at work, not just correctional officers, but counselors, TDOT workers, troopers. They're completely out of touch. And
I agree.
We need to correct that. We need a blue collar, somebody who thinks like a blue collar working class Tennessean to lead the state and get us recalibrated back toward liberty and less government.
Well, and you brought up about how God has put certain people in your path, which I think is amazing. Robbie and I, we share that we're all Christians and we're very proud of our faith. In fact, I was actually telling Robbie one of the things that most impressed me about you was, in fact, you and I had discussed this prior when I brought up, when you said in the interview, was some news outlet, I believe it was in Nashville, when you had said that you're not going to deny your faith in Jesus Christ. In fact, that the penalty to deny Jesus Christ is you're not willing to face that penalty.
It's hell.
Exactly right. And those who deny me before men, I will deny before the Father. And that really even more so stapled my support for you in this election. But the question that I really wanted to ask with that, how much has faith played a part in your decision in your political journey, especially now running for governor? You said that this was a calling from God. So what can you elaborate on that a little bit more?
Yeah, and so I say that, and some people make fun of me. They will they go back to the Blues Brothers movies and have a little fun at my expense with that. I do think God calls us into areas of work. I think if He is indeed provident in all things, if not a sparrow falls from the sky without His knowing, not a hair falls from our heads without His knowing, to assume that He is detached from all of this is a foolish thought.
Amen.
And so I think He does call us into serving our fellow man each day. You guys, where you work, you are not only serving the men and the women that you work alongside who wear the gray uniforms and the counselors and the wardens, but you're also serving those people who've been convicted of crimes and trying to make sure that they have a safe environment to do their time. There's a calling to service. The police officer is called to serve. The teacher is called to serve. We've hit a point in a polytheistic environment, brothers, where that we're not okay with saying God's calling me to do something. It scares everybody to death. Yeah. Our founders didn't think that way. George Washington didn't think that way. He often referred to providence, capital P. He's referring to the Lord God Almighty and His control over the whole universe when he used those words. And I believe that way. I think that that in government, I think that we have been endowed by our Creator with certain inalienable rights. Among those are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. I think those words in the Declaration of Independence are certainly, they don't meet or exceed Scripture inspired by God or God breathed. But as far as something a man wrote, nothing has ever been written better. And I think to be an American, you have to believe that your rights come from God. And I think if that is our belief, then why wouldn't we think that God calls people to do this? I got to tell you, friends, as much as this is running this old almost 63-year-old, anybody that would run for office like this and not feel God has called them, they might not be the sharpest knife in the drawer. It's funny, Caleb, my next interview, the one I'm going to go to at the top of the hour, is Channel 5 in Nashville, Phil Williams, who's a nice guy. Mm-hmm. He wants to do a deep dive on me being a Christian nationalist. And after I got elected the first time, I stood up and said, I'm a Christian, I'm a borders person, and all those kinds of things. And so I caught that moniker. Often the left and the right, there are Marxist Republicans and Marxist Democrats.
And we are seeing that more and more as days go on. I mean, just look at our current political climate in Tennessee and on the national scale. So I 100% agree with that.
And I reject both. I reject both
absolutely.
forms of Marxism. It is a godless thing. I reject both forms of it. So anyways, I think to be, if you want to call me a name, okay, fine. We have allowed.
I want to call you governor personally.
Well, it doesn't offend me, because when you think about what Christian nationalism means, it means Christ and Constitution. And, our nation is not the boundaries of the Pacific to the Atlantic from Canada to Mexico. That's not the nation. The nation's not even us three men. The nation is that Constitution.
Yeah.
And so the second part of that phrase that people often use in a derogatory fashion, but the first part, I am a Christian. I will not deny Christ. I can't. He's real. And so if I embrace it, I guess.
Yeah. Well, one thing I don't like
about whenever people want to put a label on Christians, I don't necessarily consider myself a Christian. I consider myself a follower of Christ, because I'm very much non-denominational, because I've been to a bunch of different Baptists, Southern Baptists, Missionary Baptists. There's so many different types of views to where it just gets confusing to people, and I've never agreed with. I've never agreed with someone saying that this is how it is, and I could never get on board with that. And I can't tell you how many churches me and my wife have surfed around to this
Over the last
last 7 years.
I was gonna say, yeah.
Because, I mean, the Lord's taken me on a long journey over the last 5 to 7 years. I mean, I've worked at
How many facilities?
5, I want to say a total of like 5 different institutions. And it's taken me out of corrections, and I've felt them pull me back into corrections. Because, I mean, I've, kind of circling back around, a lot of these people that are incarcerated, I think there's a lot of people that are in the prison system, whether it be county or state level, they're in it for the wrong reason. They
Power hungry and authoritative.
Yeah, I mean, I've worked with people all the way down from, COs all the way up to executives, whether, on both levels, on county, county and others. So I think there needs to be a drastic change in the way that they operate. And I've worked in I've worked in what some would consider the best facilities in the state and the worst facilities in the state. Like one that I haven't obviously worked in the private sector with
Core Civic.
Like Core Civic. I'll never associate myself with Core Civic. I think that for-profit, there should never be a for-profit prison like to where people make money off of inmates. That's not what they're there for.
That's glorified slave labor, in my opinion, when you're doing that.
Yeah, I would agree with you, fellas. I'm not a fan of Core Civic, and I'm sure there are good people in the company, but the whole concept of making profit off the incarceration of human being is akin to slavery. And shame on the state of Tennessee for allowing that to be the case. We've got like 6,000 inmates that are in privately operated penitentiaries now.
And I would argue they're the least safest.
Yeah, and everybody hears about the one there in Middle Tennessee. Yeah, but it's the whole concept of it's wrong. I will tell you, I've spoken to wardens in both ends of the state in this job, and they talk to me about the food service and even the medical care to some extent, and the commissary, that we have, by privatizing those elements, we have diminished the safety of the staff in the prison. And so most of these people that wear ties for a living and that they've run for office, they don't get that because they've never worn your shoes. They've never put on your uniform boots and put the badge on and gone to work. They don't understand that. And, these are human beings. Mm-hmm. Most of them aren't there for missing Sunday school. But if we're going to incarcerate these men and these women, societally, we have a responsibility to keep them fed. That doesn't mean steak and lobster. We have a responsibility to keep them safe from one another. And we do. And we have a responsibility to keep the public safe from them and the staff so that the violence gets down. And most of these politicians, bless their heart, they don't get what a $9 tube of toothpaste is doing to the safety of the staff because they don't get that. And they don't get what, visitation's important because you give men and women something to look forward to, some hope, some purpose. And we've allowed ourselves to diminish that some. I'm that person, fellas, that thinks that we underutilize the death penalty. I think that men, and it's typically men that rape women, but men who aggravated rape women ought to be eligible for the death penalty. People that human traffic for the sex trade or for labor should be eligible for the death penalty. We have to have a hard consequence. I think God calls us to civil government to be that sword. But I also think that we have men and women that are incarcerated first offenders, that we put them in a penitentiary that either flatten their time or they parole out, they pay their court costs and restitution, and for the rest of their lives, they're treated like a second-class citizen. I don't think that works in God's economy of justice, because there is a time in God's economy where Jesus said it on the cross. He said, "It is finished." And so certainly that repeat offender, maybe he or she don't get that opportunity. But that first time offender for lesser crimes, there ought to be a point at which they don't have to petition to get their voting rights back, but it's automatic. And part of that, I think, ought to include their behavior while you fellas are in care of them. I think that there should be some tie-in to not just the sentencing and not just the crime committed, but also their behavior in the penitentiary. That if they're a model inmate, if they meet the requirements that TDOC has and the state has put on them, then perhaps that first-time offender, when they get out, they ought to get all the rights restored to them automatically, give them something to hope for. And that scares a few people when I say that. But I just think we've allowed that spectrum of justice to slide, and it's not where it really needs to be.
Yeah, I mean, and I would even
venture to kind of go on the opposite end of that is I would love to see harsher penalties for the way that some of these inmates act while they're incarcerated.
Yep.
Because I've been in some
dangerous situations that get swept under the rug.
Yep.
I mean, I can't tell you over the last
2 or 3 years.
2 or 3 years where I've had knives pulled on me. I've been surrounded by 10 plus gang members. It's nonstop at some of these facilities, and
because they're inmate ran.
In the institutions, that's part of the reason I left the position that I was in, is just because I went into that role wanting to make a difference. And whenever you go into those institutions, they just don't want to change it. It's easier for them to hide stuff and, sweep certain things under the rugs. I can't tell you how many times I've been threatened by an inmate, and whenever I go to lock them down, put them in the hole, I get told, "Oh, we don't have room in the hole." Well, it sounds like you need to make room. Make room, or send them out on a bus to a facility where they have room.
Well, and then one thing that even I left corrections almost 2 years ago after about 5.5 years of service between the state and local levels, respectively. One thing that I witnessed on several occasions is the lack of disciplinary measures to go against the inmates. It went from, if an inmate assaulted another inmate, they were immediately reclassified. Their security level was reclassified, and they were given a Class A write-up, disciplinary. It was changed, and it was almost like it was watered down and said, "Hey, you assaulted another inmate. Like Monty just said, we have that duty to protect them from each other. Now, it's no longer a Class A. Now we're going to make it like a Class B or a Class C. So basically, you went from real consequences to just, hey, don't do that anymore." But in they might go to the hole for a week, maybe 2, and then they're back out in the same housing unit they were in before with the victim.
Yeah, I mean,
maybe right across the hall.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen an inmate assault, whether it be spit on an officer, throw something on an officer, hit an officer, go to the hole, go back to that same pod with that same officer.
Right. That's disgusting.
Yeah. So I think that's that sliding scale of justice. And I think we have to engage their behavior while they're incarcerated to determine whether they are rewarded for good behavior when they get out, or whether they've extended their sentencing. I will be honest with you, fellas. I'm on the Government Operations Committee. I listened to the Inmate Disciplinary Review Board talk. And that's a $2.2 million taxpayer-funded group of people that make $10,000 a month to review, each one of them review inmate discipline. As of last August, based on the letter they sent me, the Department of Corrections wasn't communicating with them so that they could make any input.
I had no idea such a board even existed to begin with.
Well,
if that tells you anything.
Yeah. So these are people who don't work for the Department of Corrections. These are other people, and they review the inmate discipline. They're supposed to be looking at those most egregious. So when the last time they come before our GovOps committee, I had the opportunity to ask the person who's testifying if they felt like they had any role in the murder of Officer Pettigat, because we had a correctional officer, as you two know, murdered up in Morgan County a few months back, and that that review board, in my opinion, had been absolutely useless. So we're expending tax dollars, and why leadership in the Department of Corrections was not communicating with the inmate disciplinary review board, I don't know. I voted to discontinue the board because why should we pay for these people to provide advice on either extending sentences or reducing sentences as a result when they're not doing anything? But I think it is an important, I think that there is an important attribute in the person serving their time is how they treat the fellow inmates and the staff of the penitentiaries. And that's got to weigh heavily on when and under what conditions they're released when they're released. But I don't think that we put enough consequences on that perhaps today. And I think we need to work on that.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the double-edged sword of whether someone serves 100% of their sentence, like how they have if they're convicted of a violent crime where they have to serve 100%. I think that's kind of a double-edged sword on our half, is because if someone goes in there, they have 100%, they have no incentive to, I'm not going to make parole, so
let's raise as much cane as I possibly can and just have fun doing it.
Yeah, and I 100% agree that if somebody, does an armed robbery and shoots somebody in the process, 100% they should be in prison. But at the same time, it really affects us and how we can do our job and how we can handle that individual whenever he's behind those walls. That it's almost like the community and even the government doesn't care how they're handled once they get away from them.
And one thing that I would really like to get your thoughts on is the ideas of these dirty correctional officers, that it's a rampant issue. And I've heard people say, well, you just got to pay them more. Well, I've seen, when I started in 2017, the pay was just under $30,000 a year, and now it's starting at what, 52 something a year.
After 18 months,
it's over 60.
Yeah.
So clearly, and that's not counting overtime and extra stuff.
And in Davidson County, you can go in Davidson County Sheriff's Office, you can go in starting out, I want to say at like 62, 63 a year too.
So throwing money at the officers clearly does not get rid of the problem of dirty COs. And you definitely know as well, dirty COs, that I would argue that's one of the most dangerous or threats to officer and inmate safety.
Yep, it is. So, I did internal affairs for about a year.
Okay.
And I was the green, very green correctional officer they picked to do that. It was a great learning experience. It was a great learning experience because you did have to confront that. And it should be more than just termination. Those people who are bringing in either phones, because that's part of the currency of today. It's like a pack was, I think, when I was working there. But it puts the officers at risk, their fellow officers at risk. And those who bring drugs in, no tolerance for that. There should be a 100% prosecution rate, attempt to prosecute those people if it's found that there's evidence to support that. I mean, of course, that gets into the making sure that the investigation maintains the evidence collection correctly, and that there is something that is they were able to prosecute. But it does put the staff who are trying to do, not just the correctional officers, but the counselors, that anybody's in the compound, puts them at greater risk.
So would you agree with the idea of body cams, with COs wearing body cams? I know I know Robbie's heard about it more than I have, but there's been some rumors going around that body cams for COs they're talking about introducing them.
So there was a piece of legislation that came through this year that put them at Trousdale.
Okay.
And there seemed to be a need for it at that specific place. I don't know. I think there's pros and cons to that, to be honest with you. Just having done that job, I understand the pros and cons of it. I like the fact that our troopers and our law enforcement on the outside wear body cams. I'm completely in favor of that, because I think, as a matter of fact, I think a DUI or a any offense, to be honest with you, that there's not body cam footage with it, ought to be immediately dismissed, because I think there has to be a bias of liberty toward the individual. It's a little bit different toward the inmate. So I don't know. What are y'all's thoughts on the body cams? I'd be interested to hear from you.
So I would say I definitely agree with the pros and cons, because I think transparency is really important, and a lot of the problems that I see would be solved by body cameras, because then the institutions, they can't hide it, they can't sweep it under the rug. At that point, if I have an inmate decide he wants to pull a knife on me, they can't be like, oh well, we didn't catch that on camera.
Because I can't tell you how many times, at least for me, there was a camera in the pod. It was on the incident, but the camera, it couldn't zoom in just right, or it was at slightly the wrong angle, so you couldn't 100% see everything. And I also can't tell you how many cameras that were supposed to be there I never saw working.
Yeah.
And so I think the body cams would help mitigate that.
Yeah, but one thing that a problem that I see is a lot of people that's never worked as an officer. One thing that I foresee happening whenever it first gets unveiled and rolled out is a lot of the upper management and executives looking at it and really seeing how we as officers have to interact with these offenders. And I mean, because to a very high degree, anybody that's worked in corrections longer than, I think after you hit probably that 6 month to like a year threshold, you really start to get institutionalized and you start to act like an inmate.
Oh yeah, I agree.
I mean, you kind of have to in order to to maintain order.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a certain certain kind of, like, you kind of have to act like a criminal to a certain degree, really, to be effective whenever you don't have, especially whenever you don't have administration's backing. So I think they're in a rude awakening for whenever they hear, like, whenever they're gonna start hearing how we talk, how we have to handle situations. I think they're gonna really get to see how all these idiotic policies that they put in place, how it sounds good on paper, but until they start to
like
see
socialism.
I mean, it sounds good on paper until they start to see some of these situations unfolding.
Yeah.
Well, I know we are getting close to that time. So one thing that Robbie and I we were talking about doing this interview with you, we wanted to really get a chance to ask you some fun, personal questions, kind of get away from the political stuff, because that's, Lord have mercy, we know you're probably tired of the political conversation. So just kind of have some fun and let our listeners really get to see who you really are. So some of the questions we have is, what is your favorite book? If you had to pick one.
Well, easy, the Bible. I try to read my Bible each day. I would offer a couple others that I think are good reads and must reads. And Huckleberry Finn is a good read, probably a must read. President Washington's Farewell Address, which is not a book. It's, I don't know, 18, 20, 30 pages long, depending on how you print it. That's a must read. There was something I read probably 30 years ago, and it's one of these books that takes forever because it was so thick, but it was by Colonel David Hackworth, About Face. And it talks about the journey of his journey. It's an autobiography as being a soldier starting in Vincennes, Italy after World War II and up through Vietnam, and how the system failed him in many cases. And he talks, he's passed on now, very decorated soldier. It's a great read, I think. I think it's important. I like Dr. Seuss books. My grandkids like Dr. Seuss books. And I think it's important to have a little fun with what you read too. I'm working on a book now. I think it's going to be one of my favorites, and it's called Dog Company. And
Dog
it's
Company,
about
okay.
a modern version of the 506th Parachute Infantry Regiment with the 101st Airborne. These originally, that 506 was the Band of Brothers that you've seen in the movie. That was the Band of Brothers
I
unit.
didn't know that.
Easy Company. Well, Dog Company is a story about this whole enduring war on terror that we continue to send troops off into. And I'm about halfway through that book. It's a really good read about failed policy. And I mentioned a couple of those, the Dog Company and About Face. It's important to come to a realization that we have people in government and in authority that are making bad decisions, not to just criticize them, but to correct that. One must first assess honestly, openly, with good situational awareness where you are if you're going to navigate to where you need to be.
Yeah.
And that's part of my reason, that you hear me talk so much about different things. Reducing tax burden on Tennesseans, tremendously important. Reforming property tax, tremendously important, because your families feel those things.
Well, I noticed you. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I know we said we were going to shift towards personal questions, but I do have one more question because I'm born and raised in Middle Tennessee. I'm from White House, Tennessee, originally, and I've actually worked for Davidson County before, and I kind of wanted to get your opinion on Davidson County Sheriff's Office. What is your opinion on how they're one of the few sheriff's office in I think the country that doesn't have any kind of arresting authorities? They're not post certified. Because I think we can all agree that, especially in Middle Tennessee, there's definitely a policing shortage. We have a shortage of police officers, and I feel like that's a gap that could be, filled in that realm. And I've heard various things of Sheriff Darren Hall, how he doesn't want to get post certified, and I've heard pushback from him. I just wanted your opinion if you think it'd be a good idea for them to look at getting post certified.
Yeah, I think that's a big question. You've enlightened me to something I didn't know about arrest authority with Davidson County. I think the post certification's a good thing in most cases. I think we push that a little bit too much sometimes with, to be honest, and this is going to get me in trouble with the many sheriffs when I say this, but I think if one of you men want to run for sheriff, that state law requiring you to be post certified to run is unnecessary. I think sheriffs are typically administrative positions, and I certainly think their deputies ought to be post certified, right, and be trained, because I think there's a lot of value in that. But I think sometimes we want to paint everything with the same brush, and I see us doing that some in Nashville with the post certification. There's a push to bring this past year, and I think I voted against it, our fire inspectors, our fire marshals under a post certification. I think sometimes we paint too many things with the same brush, but if that answers your question. I think you ought to be able to run for that office of sheriff without being post certified, I think. But I think that certainly having the deputies trained, it should be a requirement.
Yeah, it's a lot of people don't know that, and I can't tell you how many people I've told, and they're just like they don't have arresting authorities. Because I told them, I said, yeah, because if you ever see a Davis County Sheriff's Office patrol car out running around, I said, if you ever see lights on, you'll never see blue lights on it. They're always white and amber.
Well, I know we're getting really close to time, so I think we got time for one more question. I'm asking our producer back here. She's the one who keeps us all organized, because if not, we wouldn't be able to do what we do with this. Yeah, so
what's your top one you want to ask?
Well, since you kind of took the last political question, I'm not going to do that to him again. So I will ask this. What kind of Harley do you have, and do you have a dream bike ride in Tennessee? If you do, will you tell us whether you've taken it or not?
I have 3 Harleys and 1 Kawasaki. I'm motorcycle poor. I have an XR 1200X, which was they made for about 4 years in the United States, and it's a flat track replica. And it's a great little Sportster. It's a 92 horsepower factory Sportster. It's fun to ride. I think it's an 09. I have an 06 that I've converted into a dirt bike. I'm about 90%. It's got 8 inches of suspension travel, full knobby, 18-inch rear, 21-inch front. Went from belt to chain, 2-in-1 super trap. It looks like it's kind of modeled after my KLR. It's just a 500-pound version of it. And then I just bought an 87 because it had a classic paint job. It's got just enough patina on it. It's old. It looks like me. It's still serviceable, but and a heritage Softail. And so I'm looking forward to riding it some. I would like to do a cross the country ride at some point in time before I get too old to do that. I don't know if that's a heritage Softail or if that's rent a motorcycle to do it, but I think that'd be a fun thing to do. It's different when you ride a bike rather than a truck, or a car.
Oh yeah.
Usually we have the air conditioner on and you don't know what the temperature is outside, but on a motorcycle, when you put it in that little valley, you feel the cooler air. You smell the fields, whether it's chickens and cows or whatever. It's just and there's nothing like rolling that throttle back. I've ridden sport bikes like Ninjas and stuff in the past. My XR is really responsive. This Softail that I just bought, not so much. It's a little more noise and a little less go, but I enjoy motorcycles.
I've been riding motorcycles since about 2019. I just bought my first Harley this year. I bought my 2014 Electric Glide Ultra Classic. Was never a Harley guy. Got on this one, fell in love with Harley. Up to this point, I was a Kawasaki and Yamaha guy, kind of always that cruiser. And Robbie he just bought his first non-Harley.
Yeah, I'm still coming to terms with that. I bought my first Harley whenever I was 15. I started on a Super Glide. Then I rode the dog piss out of that. I rode it for 6 years, and then I went up to an Ultra Classic. And life happened, and life got expensive, and I just actually bought his old Yamaha, and I'll probably ride that. Then that'll probably be my wife's bike.
And I'm still going to give you crap over it, just because you gave me crap for not owning a Harley for so long.
Yeah.
Hey, give me a couple more questions. I looked at my my phone wrong. I don't have to do one until 1, so don't feel pressured to get me out of your 10 minutes.
Oh, well, then great. We've got other questions. We were trying to be respectful of your time.
So let me add to the motorcycle thing. I enjoy
absolutely.
all things internal combustion.
Yes.
I like cars, and I like tinkering with them. I like tractors. I like tinkering with tractors. There's something about the hum of that little diesel engine on my tractor when I'm bush hogging that is therapeutic. It's kind of like my therapy, much like riding a motorcycle.
I love it. I don't think we've ever had a governor candidate or governor period that could say they're doing the things that Monty likes to do.
Well, I can tell you this: you've never had a governor that has been a part of the strategic stockpile, and
that's true.
You've never had a governor, I don't think, that's been a union steward. I may be the only Republican you ever known that's been a union steward. I've been an asbestos worker because when I was a supervisor, we used to have to help with the abatement of asbestos and what we did. It's been too long since we had a governor who's a veteran. We need
I agree.
Ned Ray McWhorter, who was a Democrat, right? But he was probably more conservative than the current governor in many ways, and more in touch with average people. And he was a veteran. He was a National Guardsman. And you have to go back to find a combat veteran. You have to go back a long ways.
Yeah.
And so I think it's probably been longer that you've had a governor that really didn't want to do it, but he just feels compelled by God to go do it, just to be honest with you. I think many of these men and women that get into this, the title becomes something that they want to do. They want to be called governor. They want to have the front seat and have everybody want to kiss their ring. I don't want any part of that. I want to be a public servant. I fully intend to kick over some tables in Nashville, Tennessee, because there are some that need to be kicked over.
Amen.
But I also intend to wash some feet, because we just saw Governor Lee's administration, and I don't think he runs anything, so I don't know whose idea it was, but he attempted to put a stick in the eye of all the state employees this year on a couple things. We started removing TSEA people from boards, and they were going to get rid of the third step grievance. That third step grievance probably impacts 2 people a year in the state of Tennessee. So that's de minimis. But the way it does impact people is this, that it develops a culture, I think, and I said this on the floor when I argued against that bill. I said it in committee when I argued against it. We were able to get that bill beat, an administration bill beat on the House floor, which is a huge thing.
Yeah.
I talked to state employees in corrections, in TDOT, in DCS, in DHS, you name it. And there's a common message. Nobody's listening to us.
Yes.
Nobody cares what we think, what we say. We're just told to show up and do what we're told. That is a recipe for disaster in managing any organization. I've led soldiers in combat. I have managed highly complex nuclear manufacturing, chemical synthesis operations. And a good leader knows the temperature of the climate of the people he's leading because he listens to them. And it doesn't mean that you all are going to say, hey, Monty, you need to go do this, and I just automatically do it. But you got to at least understand the perspective of the people they're talking. There has to be an open door policy at the commissioner level. There has to be an open door policy at the governor's level. If we don't, and I'm not talking about just for state employees, I'm talking about for citizens in Tennessee, because I think we've allowed so much PAC money to come into politics that we have lost touch with the average Tennessean. And I think most Tennesseans are going to appreciate having a Christian, constitutional, conservative country boy from Kingston, Tennessee being next governor.
Amen. That is one thing I have been telling people about you, is you're just a good old country boy from Rockwood, Tennessee. And that I'm right there with you. And it's about time we have somebody like you as a governor of our great state.
I'm excited, and to even further that, I'm excited to, the possibility of somebody that's been at the entry level of, corrections to where, the working class.
You understand us.
Yeah, I mean.
Because you were there.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's going to be, it sounds like you have a broad history. You have the military, you have the, entry level of correctional officer. I mean, and probably the peak at the, like the non-sanctioned. Because I believe Caleb told me that you had worked at Brushy Mountain.
Morgan County Regional. I ran the transport. Me and one other corporal me and 3 other corporals ran transport, worked for a captain at that time. And so we hauled weekly from D block or from B block at Brushy. So we'd go there and pick up. And we had the chain that ran from the old TSP all the way up to what had become Carter County Work Camp. But we did all that transport in the east half of the state. It was a busy job. I stayed on the road all the time doing that for a year.
Yeah, that's what makes me excited. Yeah. Whenever I talk to you, and the more I hear about you, the more I learn about you, is just not just another politician. And
aren't you glad I talked to you about him?
Well, I will tell you, I'm certainly not perfect. I'm in need of the blood more than anybody you know. And I made a promise to myself and I made a promise to my wife and the 70,000 people I work for in House District 32, and most importantly to Almighty God. You're not going to have to worry and wonder what I'm thinking about. I'm going to tell you. And some of the things I'll say will scare people to death. And I don't say them to do that. When I talk about expanding the death penalty on doctors who are doing trans surgeries on kids.
Absolutely.
It's not that I want to hurt those people, but there has to be a consequence. God is going to judge us by just turning our nose to this. And we just can't do that. And I get lots of flack and death threats and, dirty emails and stuff. But the thing about it is, whether you agree with me on all those things, you'll know where I stand. If you go talk to Rose or Marcia and ask them questions, they'll go, blah, 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 blah.
My producer's telling me to keep my mouth shut about your opponents because I have very strong opinions about your opponents that they would not be a positive light. So I'm going to zip it on that. But one thing that, because we've established that you are that common man, and we need that in leadership in our state. And one thing that I'm hearing and seeing from my colleagues and my friends and in my local communities, and you see it all over the news, these AI data centers and these solar farms that are coming in, and they're ruining local environments in the communities. How do we stop it? I mean, what can we do?
Well, first and foremost, the state of Tennessee should expend none of your tax dollars in incentivizing those people to come here. So you've heard that there's been a push in Nashville. The Tennessee Department of Economic and Community Development is reportedly going to give Starbucks $30 million to move their headquarters to Tennessee. They say
$30 million.
Yeah, they say that's going to bring 2,000 jobs. You do the math on how much that is to recruit each job. But we're recruiting a culture coming from Seattle, Washington that hates America. Why would we do that? We have sent money to Ford. I have 2 Ford pickup trucks. I like Ford pickup trucks. But we sent 800 million plus in recruitment to get Ford to build electric trucks in West Tennessee, and they haven't rolled the first one out yet. We shouldn't be spending that corporate welfare. And there's no question in my mind that somebody in Nashville wants to recruit AI data centers. Here's what I think about AI data centers. First of all, God gave you two fellows and me 2 or 3 brain cells to be able to solve very complex problems if we decide to, whether that's how to frame a house or pour concrete, or whether that's determine the K effective of a nuclear system. He give us the ability to do that, and I can do all 3 of those. And if we allow ourselves to be replaced, if we allow ourselves to replace that with a technology that thinks for us, we're damning our children and our grandchildren. We can't do that. I said this to Flora Tidings, who's she's over the Tennessee Board of Regents, not the Rhone states and the volunteer states, Cleveland states, etc. I've said this to Stuart McWhorter. We're allowing AI to happen to us rather than for us. Secondly, to get past God give us the ability to think, and we shouldn't try to replace that. Secondly, the consumption of electricity at a time when those federal politicians have failed us for decades to get a TVA that would produce more and more electricity, because we had more and more people moving here. Maybe not at the same rate as we've had for the last 5-6 years, but there's been a lot of people moving to Tennessee. Our population's grown, and we have not increased our generating capacity. And AI is going to, and the data centers are going to use lots of that. We have not considered what field is generated by the retention of that data. If we have this large building, whether it takes up our farmland or our forest land, or whether one of the other candidates is suggesting that we build them underground. Well, again, I don't think they're considering what that frequency may be doing to us. Yeah. And lastly, I don't want any entity, any big globalist company, nor the United States government, nor the Tennessee government, collecting my words, my actions, nor what I spend my money on. I don't want that.
Dead-gum business.
There is what's called the Fourth Amendment to the United States Constitution. And
yes,
we are being constantly surveilled, from flock cameras to our cell phones. And we give our cell phones permission to surveil us. All these electronics are surveilled. And we're putting ourselves in a bad spot with that. Just as we were invaded by 21 million illegals from China, from every European nation, and from South American nations during the Biden's illegitimate presidency, I'm afraid we're about to be invaded by the globalists on these AI data centers. And I don't see enough of the people in Nashville standing up and saying no. So no Tennessee dollars first. and leading
Amen.
with a very vocal policy that we're not going to allow these net 7 jobs to come in and ruin our quality of life in Tennessee. It's reported, I don't remember the number. Again, I've asked for the specific numbers. I don't have them yet, but that we invested millions of dollars in Oracle to get them to move their center here. It was reported, I'll say that again, that it netted 7 jobs in Tennessee and resulted in layoffs in other places where H-1B visa holders replaced those jobs.
Oh my gosh.
These tech company owners, in many cases, maybe most cases, are not America first, Tennessee first people. They're dollar first people. And I want them to make a profit. Dale has a significant investment in Tennessee, and I appreciate that. But that we brought in an Oracle to headquarter here and gave them tax dollars to do that, corporate welfare, we shouldn't do that. Most of these people, I think, again, that run these technology companies, whether they're training people to around the world how to use their software, as Congressman Rose says about his company, most of them are press one for English companies. They have somebody from India or Pakistan or whatever answering the phones, and they're paying them nothing and making millions of dollars from us to get that training. They have not exhibited a care or concern for Tennesseans. I think we need Tennessee first, citizen only approach to these things.
Yeah, and I have a question. I think, and this one kind of goes down to even, low income all the way up to high income. What is your opinion on like taxation of groceries whenever like our neighbor Kentucky doesn't have, taxes on groceries? And
well, 2 things. One is, of course, Texas has or Kentucky, I think, has an income tax. I think
They do.
so. They tax, and their economy is not as robust as ours. But I have attempted twice now to start removing the state portion of the grocery sales tax. So you pay 4 cents on every dollar right now on every loaf of light bread, gallon of milk, or dozen eggs that you buy, and that goes to Nashville. I want to permanently remove that 4 cents. If your county, whether it's Morgan County or Monroe County, wants to charge the 2 or 3% or whatever for the grocery taxes, let's let that all mark it out, because I think that'll work itself out. But let's leave that 4 cents on every dollar you spend in your pocket. It will do 2 things. One, it will stimulate the economy and revenue collection, because most Tennesseans that the 3 of us know need those 4 cents on every dollar, and they'll spend it on something else, either more groceries or another pair of blue jeans or a new car or a bicycle or a motorcycle or something. And it will generate revenue in those other categories, first and foremost for your county. And I think that's tremendously important. The state government has become accustomed to collecting, since Bredesen, more of your tax dollars than the counties do. And that has grown government in Nashville. It has grown the overreach of government in Nashville. And if we could just simply pull that 4 cents grocery tax off, we will retract some of that growth and that overreach that Nashville has been a part of. So 2 times I've tried to carry that. I couldn't get enough people to vote for it. We were taking a measured approach to start pulling it off on certain items. We started with WIC items. So WIC, Women, Infant, and Children Federal Program, it's already programmed into every grocery store, though, so that they know if they buy milk, juice, bread, eggs, et cetera, that they don't pay any grocery sales tax on. I wanted to extend that to everybody, and we couldn't get that through. That's going to be high on my list. As a matter of fact, I just sent Governor Lee, Speaker Sexton, Lieutenant Governor McNally, and all the General Assembly members a letter last Friday asking them to join me in a call to suspend the collection of gasoline tax, which is 26 cents per gallon plus 1.4, diesel tax, which is 27 cents per gallon plus 1.4, petroleum special tax, the 1.4 is, and state grocery sales tax. If you look 10 months ago, and you see that in the letter I sent out, it's on my social media and stuff, the average price of gasoline 10 months ago in Tennessee across the state was $2.72 a gallon. Last week, it was like $4.14. That's a 53% increase. So that means that not only are you having a hard time buying gas to go to the grocery store, but everything you're going to buy in the grocery store is more expensive. Our farmers who don't pay on their agricultural equipment some of that diesel tax, right? But they still have to go to the grocery store in their F-250s or F-150s, whatever, or their cars, their sedans. It's killing our farmers and their families. And so my letter, I ask that we suspend the collection of those taxes through at least the end of this fiscal year, which would be June 30th, right? And you might say, well, Monty, how can we afford to do that? So last year, the budget that was voted in under the current fiscal year that we're in, it was voted in for 25-26, $59.8 billion. And the projection in this year's budget request for 26-27 estimated or projected that we were going to collect $64.1 billion in revenue. That's almost $5 billion above what we had budgeted for. Mm-hmm. The Fiscal Review Committee just last week released numbers saying that we were $338 million in advance of what we expected to collect through the end of March. So I think we can suspend those taxes on Tennesseans, those three things I mentioned, not hurt the budget anywhere. We just won't collect as much revenue and provide Tennesseans with a little bit of needed relief right now, because everybody you all work with in corrections, everybody that lives around me, I live in a nice place, but they're feeling the gas and the groceries and everything that goes along with that. Because when fuel costs go up, everything goes up. It is a catalyst for the economy. And
I agree. I mean, shoot, I drive 40 miles each way to work every day. So I'm driving 80 miles a day. And that gas bill adds up quickly. I mean, at $4.14 a gallon on average price, that crap hurts my wallet.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm fortunate that I only live about 15 minutes.
Yeah, quit bragging. Shut up. Well, and Monty, I do have a question. You brought up the government overreach. And so with that, this is, some people, depends on how you view it.
This is one thing you have a strong opinion on.
Yeah, I hate government overreach. I personally, I loathe it with a passion. So with that, medical marijuana in the hemp industry, what is your stance on that?
So I've been asked that question a lot. Let me start with this. I can never get to a public recreational use of marijuana. I'll be honest with you, my friends.
That's fair.
If I could pull alcohol so that it's not so publicly proliferated, more akin to what it was when I grew up, I would do that. We have become a drunken, addicted society. But I also think that those people who suffer from epilepsy, from cancer treatment, I guess the pain and everything that goes along with that, to our PTSD folks, not just our military, but folks that have worked in law enforcement and corrections, experience PTSD. There's some things you have to see and have to do that just God didn't design you to have to see and do, and they're hard on the emotion of the person, hard on the mental health of the person. If there is a natural alternative to that, I could be in favor of that. So I was asked on the Chris Hand show. He's become a buddy of mine. He does Super Talk in Nashville on 99.7. And apparently he had asked the other two candidates if the General Assembly brought a bill for medical marijuana, and you can get THC now through a prescription, but it's, as I understand it, it's a synthesized version of it. So that's important in my answer to you all. But he said both Rose and Blackburn said that they would veto that. And so he asked me that question. Chris did. I said, well, I want to lead the way with a task force that first takes the big pharmaceutical companies out of it, because my friends, they have proven time and time again that they are less concerned about your addiction than they are their profits on lots of things that they put into the economy. I'm thankful for good medications, but I don't trust the big pharmaceutical companies. I don't take money from them like the other two do. I don't trust what I call the Colorado pothead lobby. The Colorado pothead lobby just wants every Tennessean to be stoned and then they'll make lots of money. They're much like the big pharmaceutical companies. They have a little bit different end game. Both include profit. And then thirdly is as little government control as possible, because these politicians want to tax things to death. And so with those three things in mind, I'd like to pull together a task force of people that develops a good, solid policy so that that veteran who has had 13 deployments to Iraq and Afghanistan can get access to a safe, natural form of marijuana through a prescription. Again, natural is important because, as I understand, I've never tried marijuana, don't know anything about it. But as I understand it, the THC concentration has gone up over years. Mm-hmm. And it's become something, and I talked to many of my law enforcement friends, that is up in the percentage where it like causes convulsions and all kinds of crazy stuff. And I think that's probably the result of genetically engineering the seed. And I think there's a way to get to some natural approach. I don't have all the answers to it, but I'm certainly open to trying to figure out how we get there.
Well, and see, for me, the medical marijuana, it's a personal thing, not me personally, but personal. My mother suffered, she just got diagnosed with breast cancer in the last few months. She's now at stage 2. She's on chemo, unfortunately. And she's also, on top of that, has multiple sclerosis. My sister also has multiple sclerosis. And studies that have come out, especially with marijuana, with their, I think my mom calls it restless leg, and she gets leg cramps and stuff like that. There has been studies proving marijuana's efficacy in the treatment of that. Now, my mother and sister, they do use the CBD or the legal stuff now, but I think that I would personally, and I know they would agree with me, they would like to see it expanded so they can get better treatment, more natural treatment for these ailments that they didn't ask for, that they're going to, MS are going to suffer with for the rest of their entire lives. But
yeah, I mean, and I, and me on my side, I've got a lot of, I deal with a lot of anxiety, a lot of stuff from just traumatic experiences that I've seen in my 10 years in corrections. And it hits right at home with my wife, because I've seen what the CBD and, we've used actual marijuana in Illinois and in Colorado. I have seen what it does to her with her anxiety and her PTSD instantly. So, I mean, I think it's very important to, get away from all the such addictive pills and, things that people are using. I mean, I think majority of pills are just poison.
Like Suboxone. I mean, Monty, I don't know if Suboxone was big in your time in law enforcement, but I know, at least in Robbie's and I's time, Suboxone, it may not be anymore, but it was on the rise when I was still in. And
it's still very prevalent, like in prison.
Okay, I didn't know if it was still prevalent or not. And you have Suboxone, which is a man-made substance that it's killing people, and it's making and that was our solution to get people off heroin. Oh, let's give them Suboxone, and there was no thought behind that process. It has zero efficacy in actually doing it. I've never met one successful story. Never seen one successful story of, I use Suboxone to get off heroin. Never seen one.
Yeah. So, fellas, I think again, there's a liberty part of that. It is a plant God made. I hear that a lot. We've allowed I've seen lots of people that I grew up with, they become potheads, and it led to other things. And I think there can be a very damaging pathway with anything. Mm-hmm. Donuts, eating too many sweets, drinking too many beers, all of those kinds of things. And there's some personal responsibility that goes on to that. But I do think that having that natural alternative is something that we have to at least put some work into developing the policy so we could get there. But I say this in most cases, and I'll probably need to go shortly after this one. But we need a move of repentance in Tennessee. Yep. We need leaders who will not be polytheistic and say that well, they recognize all gods. I don't. I recognize the Lord Jesus Christ as the only way to heaven. He says he is the way, the truth, and the life. No man comes to the Father except by him. And I think that we are at all times, but especially with all the things we face now, there better be a move of us men of God back toward our knees, our repentant knees, seeking his hand of healing and blessing on our state. And I think he provides lots of ways to heal. I think certainly, I believe Jesus converted dirty hand washing water into high alcohol content wine in Cana at the wedding. I think he did that. But he gives us lots of prohibitions about the use of it, right? As a matter of fact, Jesus himself said that, and throughout Scripture, not just during the 33 years that he was here on earth, but the kings, the politicians aren't even supposed to drink because it messes up the thought process. I'd like to see that applied to these politicians. They put down the Jack Daniels and the Budweiser. We might have a better policy.
Okay, I'm getting ready to say another comment about one of your opponents. My producers nicked me in the bud.
Well,
So
I think we're definitely getting to the end. One thing we do like to do is we're trying to end all of our podcasts with a prayer.
Or start one. Yeah.
Before we do that, is there any last comments that you just want to pass to our viewers? I
would like to say for any of our listeners that want to maybe donate to your campaign, I know that's people are able to now that you're out of session, your legislative session. Can you tell our listeners and our viewers how can they help? How can they get involved in your campaign if they decide to?
First pray. This victory will be a God thing. We cannot raise enough money. I can't knock enough doors. I can't travel the roads enough to beat these mega millionaires in the big system. It'll be a God thing. And I'm looking for that victory. So pray that I'll do what's right and holy in God's eyes. Pray that I'll remember my oath of the Constitution I took first in 1983, and pray that I'll keep a servant's heart as number 3. If you'll pray those things, I appreciate it. Go to social media, look up Monty Fritts, go to Twitter or X and Facebook and Instagram and all the different platforms. Go to, just go to Monty Fritts and you'll find it every platform. We'll have something out. There is an opportunity if you want to send a few dollars. If God's blessed you with a few additional dollars, I would certainly appreciate that. We're very frugal with them. We'll put them to good use. But it is a God thing. And secondly, if you go to my websites and you watch these videos that we put out, and again, I'll speak just straightforward, and you think liberty and less government is something that Tennessee needs, and if you're one of those people that says, please don't DC my Tennessee, then with another career DC politician, then I need your vote. Early voting starts on July 17, runs through August 1. August 6 is election day. And tell all your friends. Go to your contact list on your phone and say, hey, check out Fritz. Go listen to this Liberty and Less Government. Go look at my voting record. We scored 100 with Freedom Index last year. I have a 94 lifetime. I think it's going to go up even more this year, the lifetime score, by the votes we cast this year. The others can't even compare to that. If you look at a composite of Congress that was just performed where the Freedom Index and 2 other assessments on voting records of congressmen were considered, and it's out on some of the social media sites now. The House members of Congress, Tennessee didn't have anybody that got an A. They had 2 or 3 people get a B. They had 1, I think, get a C, and the rest of them get D's or F's. And I think Congressman Rose got a D. That's unacceptable. That's not tough like Trump. That's silly to get a D is what that is. And, we offer these things and these platitudes that these politicians try to ring kiss with people. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to tell you what I think and ask you to go look at my voting record and those things that I ran on, we've tried to accomplish. We've led the nation in probably 6 areas minimum, nationally. The prayer resolution, no other state's done what we did with House Joint Resolution 803 and 51. Marriage, protecting the officiant to not be forced to solemnize a marriage. We just passed one this year that purveyors of pornography, whether it's strip clubs, according to the law now, strip clubs have to post at every door a sign that says, attention, that by participating in this form of entertainment, you may be contributing to human trafficking, rape, and sexual assault. Places who sell dirty tapes and videos have to put that where they sell them, that the production of those materials leads to sexual assault, may lead to sexual assault, and rape and human trafficking. We've led in that. We led on geoengineering. We've led on guns. The legislation we carried with Gun Owners of America, they told us Tennessee had the best laws in the nation to protect firearms manufacturers and retailers. And that's important for us to maintain a Second Amendment. So I would just ask folks to look at those. If you like what you see, share it with all your neighbors. I'd appreciate it.
Well, Monty, we were going to go ahead and close in prayer. We would love it if you would lead us in that prayer. So,
Heavenly Father, thank you for these two young men. I pray, God, that you would anoint them with your Spirit. I pray, God, that you would move in their lives and their families' lives. I pray, God, that you would continue to mold and refine these young men, that they might be witnesses for you, that they might be light and salt in the communities they live and the places they work. I pray, God, that you'd give them wisdom and discernment. I pray, God, that you would raise them up to be, again, as they get older, mighty men of God that stand on the authority of what Jesus has said. We pray, God, that you would protect them from the harms and dangers of both the work environment and just this world that we live in. And then you'd put a hedge of protection around them. Pray for their families. I pray that they'll raise up children and grandchildren that will seek after you. I pray, God, that they would be known as men who are servants of the Most High. And I ask these things, God, for the expansion of your kingdom and for the glorification of your name, in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, Monty, for being on. This was a wonderful experience. Definitely. Hopefully we can have you on again after you win this primary in just a couple months, and hopefully you'll be our next governor of our great state of Tennessee. Thank you for all you've done. Thank you again for being here.
Thank you, friends. I appreciate it.